Do you want to know why someone who is an adamant supporter of spanking is now completely against it? What would make someone decide to forego everything they were raised with to do the complete opposite? Well, that's what we're going to talk about on this episode of This Parenting Life. Hi, I'm Mary, and at This Indulgent Life, I help you navigate parenting, education, and living your extraordinary life. So this week, for our first episode of This Parenting Life, we're going to look at the 7 reasons why I decided to become a gentle parent. Have you decided to be a more gentle and respectful parent? Let me know why in the comments below. And if you're still on the fence, what are you worried about that's holding you back? So this week on This Parenting Life, we're talking about my journey to gentle parenting. The 7 reasons I decided that this would be the parenting method that I move forward with, despite everything I used to believe. I used to believe that kids needed spanking, they needed timeouts, and I am pretty much a yeller. That's what I grew up with. It's, I guess, what I'm used to. And I'm working on it. But I've realized that what I thought gentle parenting was, aka permissive parenting, it's not. Gentle parenting does not equal permissive parenting. And so I had to let that worry go first off. Then I had to start looking at why was spanking, yelling, timeouts, why did those things not work? Or did they work? It started, I think, as a teacher. I am an art teacher. And a few years ago, I started looking into teaching for artistic behavior, where it really trusts children. The whole premise is that children are the artists and the art room is their studio. And there's a lot of trust that goes on there because kids design their own artwork, they get their own materials, they clean up their own materials. There's a lot of trust that goes into that. That's not something most teachers allow to happen. So as I was learning and teaching, I started seeing kids in a different light. And I started trusting them more. And I started realizing, you know what? Kids have their own ideas. They have their own feelings. They're not just vessels to input everything into. They don't need us telling them what to do all the time in order to make the right decisions or good decisions. There's more to them than that. I also started looking at our culture. And if you realize our culture does not think well of children. I mean, just look at our language. Don't act like a child. Stop being so childish. You can just see in the way that we talk, we don't think very much of children. And I realized that needed to change. So the deciding moment came when Boogie was 10 months old. And we had this fan sitting on this small platform, totally within reach of his little fingers. Child-proofing isn't really something we did or could do where we lived, so he just kept going for the fan. He wanted to stick his fingers in the grates of the fan. I don't know why, but this was his thing. And my husband got a little annoyed with that. I did too, but he thought we needed to stop it now. And he asked me to slap his hands. And I realized at that moment something did not feel right. My instincts kind of went into overdrive and I was just like, why am I slapping his hands? And until that point, I had completely trusted my instincts with parenting. Whatever felt right is what we ended up doing. And it had gotten us pretty good so far. So I decided to really look into this feeling. I had realized through some Facebook mom groups that you know I'm addicted to, that what I did was a little bit more towards the attachment parenting style. So I started researching that, which led me to gentle and respectful parenting. And then that kind of opened my eyes into this world in realizing, I even researched what are different parenting styles. I went that far. I wanted to know what the different parenting styles were, what the differences were, the pros and the cons. And I'm a researchaholic, so I researched it all. And in the end, I decided that I was wrong. I could see all the science behind the authoritarian style of parenting, and I realized I did not want that for my child. So quick disclaimer, I do not blame my parents for everything wrong in my life. I know that's a big one that people say millennials and my generation does. I don't. Our parents did what they thought they needed to do. Our parents tried the best that they could with what they had. I know my mom in particular just wanted to make sure I didn't turn out like her. I'm fairly certain there's a big wave. It's like a roller coaster each generation. We kind of go back and forth trying to not do what our parents did. But in the end, I think my mom turned out pretty great. I think that her fears were part of what pushed her, and she got some advice that she thought she should go with. But as we all know better, do better. They didn't have the research that we have now. So they couldn't have done anything different. They just did what they could. And my kids, I'm sure, will do the same. So there's no mom judging here. No mom shaming. Everyone is on their own journey. Everyone is at different stages in their journey. I just hope that this helps you kind of look at your parenting style a little bit and make sure that you understand why you have chosen what you have chosen. So, my 7 reasons why I decided to become a gentle parent. Reason number 1. Punitive punishments don't work. Studies over the last several decades have showed us that they don't work. If they do work, it's only in the immediate part that they work. Long term, instead shows us so many other things. For one, hitting begets hitting. When you hit your child will then go hit others. It's just, they are little sponges and they soak up everything that you do. And they see you punishing them when you're upset and you feel they wronged you. And so when somebody else wrongs them, that's how they solve their problem. Emily Rothman of the Boston University, she's an associate professor, she says this, and I'm going to read it here, so give me a second. The experience of having someone direct aggression to you increases the likelihood that you'll fall back on aggression when in a fight or flight moment. Having been hit by a parent can elevate stress and reduces a child's coping skills, so they may lash out. I would say they do lash out most of the time. In fact, whenever as a teacher I've seen kids hit other kids and I bring them over and I talk to them, every single time, or at least 98% of the time, that child A hit child B because he felt child B had wronged him in some way. And so he felt he needed to hit him. When you don't teach your child how to handle these situations without hitting, then that's what they're going to revert to. When you spank a child for what they've done wrong, they're going to feel the need to hit other child when they do wrong. It's just the way things work. It's just, that's what they have associated. That's the step-by-step process that they have come to the conclusion of. Punitive punishments also create a cycle of misbehavior. Catherine Taylor says the odds of a child being more aggressive at age 5 increased by 50%. Let me say that again. The odds of a child being more aggressive at age 5 increased 50% if he had been spanked more than twice in the month prior to the study began. 50%. So if just 2 spankings in a month increases aggression, imagine what spankings every day or even once a week would do. So most children don't behave better just because they're spanked. In fact, studies have shown that the more you spank, the more a child will misbehave. Children will learn to lie better. They will learn to hide things better. And if it does work, they just kind of learn to give up, because they just start feeling like they are bad and they can't do anything right. They'll never get it right. Every time they try, they just get spanked, because a child doesn't have impulse control yet. They don't have that ability to regulate and to stop themselves from squirreling off. And so even though they've tried and tried and tried and tried and tried, and all of a sudden they fail, then they get spanked, to them it doesn't matter that they've tried 100 times already. They make a mistake once. Why try anymore? So as you can see, even if spanking does work, it just creates a fear of doing wrong. It creates anxiety. You get afraid of annoying people. You are afraid of yourself even. And that brings us to point number 2. Reason number 2. Spanking is actually detrimental to your child's health. Their mental health and their physical health. There have been numerous studies over the last several decades that show the damaging effects on the brain as well as the toll it takes on the body. There are several studies, and if you read the blog, you can see several links to these studies or articles on these studies that show the effects on mental health. You have depression, anxiety, antisocial tendencies, especially in little boys, suicidal thoughts, if not actions, personality disorders, self-injury, and even substance abuse. Some of these will start early. Most of these take 5, 10, 15 years to really show the effects. Studies have shown that physical punishment may actually decrease the gray matter in your brain. And that gray matter is actually really important to your overall working system. It is in charge of the nervous system. It is in charge of sensory perception. It controls your memories and so much more. There was also another study that says that spankings correlated with an increased risk of obesity, arthritis, and even heart disease. So not only did I just read this, but I feel like my husband and I actually have experienced this. For me personally, obviously, we both have the obesity issue. But I would say that's not completely just for spankings. Don't get me wrong. There's a whole series of reasons there. I do have arthritis. And then my memories, I do have long-term memory, but my short-term memory is very, very short. I don't have one. Okay? My short-term memories suck, for lack of a better word. I've always felt since I was a child that I had the memories of an 80-year-old woman and the body of an 80-year-old woman. I experienced tons of physical issues. I have sensory issues. Smells, touches, tastes. I can't stand some things to the point where it actually affects my ability to do things. So I do have nervous system issues. I do have endocrine issues. So I would say that it's quite a possibility that the spankings had something to do with all of these issues. I wouldn't say all of them, but it's a possibility. My husband himself, he has gut issues. He has aggression issues. We both have anxiety issues. I would say probably we've also both had suicidal issues or thoughts. Faith is the only thing that's gotten me through those. We probably both have gone through depression. So, yeah, I'm not going to get into the particulars here. Again, you can read more on the blog. But we have a lot of things that kind of correlate with these studies, and you start to wonder if even a small percentage of this is true. If even just a fraction of the issues that we have could be attributed to our spankings and physical punishments as a kid, why am I going to risk my son having any of these? Why would I, if there's another way, why won't I take that way? So, yeah, number 2 is a big one for us. It really could affect your child's health. Reason number 3. Punitive punishments do not teach a child to self-regulate their emotions. Research shows that time and time again, children who are raised in spank control households do not have the tools to regulate their emotions. They routinely rely on aggression or repression to not only deal with their own emotions, but the emotions of others. We cannot expect our children to control their temper if we cannot control our own. So in how this relates to us personally, for me, I bottle up my emotions and then I explode. In my household, negative emotions were not to be displayed. And if they were, you could expect to be either punished or ignored. So I really don't know how to deal with my emotions very well. This is a whole learning journey that I'm sharing with you. For hubby, emotions were dealt with by making jokes or kind of just shoving it under the rug. I mean, I get it. Jokes break the tension. It's easier to deal with emotions when all of a sudden you're laughing about it instead. And negative emotions are uncomfortable things to deal with. I'm not sure which direction was better, but it definitely has attributed to our own issues as adults. Not being able to process our own emotions and deal with the emotions of others is definitely one of the top 3 reasons why we have decided to try gentle parenting. You see, hubby has anxiety and OCD, as possibly even ADD, as well as his father and his siblings by his father as well. So there's a genetic component there that I have to be aware of with my son. And then, of course, there's me. As I've gotten older, I've become more and more and more afraid of messing up, to the point where I don't even start things. I have anxiety in most situations. My hubby has had to actually push me to get out of the house sometimes because it can be hard for me in social situations. People think of me as a social butterfly because once I, get started, I'm usually okay. But to be honest, I'm scared out of my mind most of the time. I'm afraid of being rejected. I struggle to maintain my composure when I feel overwhelmed most days. Basically, we can barely name more than a handful of emotions, never mind know how to deal with them. I don't want that kind of life for Boogie. If he is going to have a genetic predisposition to anxiety, depression, and feeling of being overwhelmed, anxiety, then I want to make sure to give him the tools that he needs to deal with those issues in a productive and not destructive way. Reason number 4, why I've decided to gentle parent: punitive punishments make it more difficult to learn. In a quote by Molly S. Costello, PhD, she says, I'm going to read it from here: "Spanking erodes developmental growth in children and decreases a child's IQ. A recent Canadian study shows this analysis, conducted at the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario in Ottawa, offers new evidence that corporal punishment causes cognitive impairment and long-term developmental difficulties. I think that just sums it up right there. I don't know if I need to go on. But basically, there's actually been studies that have showed a correlation with a decrease in IQ and development through spanking. When you use shame, hitting, spanking, and yelling, you actually ignite the flight or fight response in your child. And it shuts down the analytical side of the brain. Here are a few problems that I've also listed in the blog, along with some others, with corporal punishment and its effects on learning and development. One study showed that just a light slap of the hand of a toddler delayed exploratory development. Children explore the world through their hands. They have to kind of touch everything. It's kind of like a puppy with their mouths. And puppies put things in their mouths. Children they do the mouth too, but they need to touch it. They want to know what things feel like, how it moves, and how it fits in their hand. And when you slap their hands, you're training them to not explore. At that age, children can't really distinguish between good object and bad object. They just know that sometimes they touch something and their hand gets slapped. So for them, they learn to not touch anything. And that's going to delay the development of your child. There have been multiple studies that have shown that the use of corporal punishment by the time a child is in kindergarten can actually affect their education, vocabulary, math, and so on, by the time the child is in 5th grade. You might want to think about that. Your child's future education can be determined by if you use corporal punishment when they are preschoolers. Spankings lead to resentment of authority figures. Think about it. Something happens at school, the teacher tells you, you spank the child. Now, did that child feel like he had done something wrong? Possibly not. He may or she may feel that that was unwarranted and that it's unfair, and they resent you for that, and then they resent their teacher for that. And when they don't trust their teacher, they're not going to want to listen to what they have to say. Same with you. When you just continuously lecture, yell, spank, and other forms of hitting them, they're going to stop listening to you. I know I did. And finally, studies have found that students who have grown up in punitive environments actually do worse in their executive functioning skills, including delayed gratification, which is often one of the reasons why parents spank, because a child couldn't wait. So, essentially, you are creating more of a problem if you spank your child for not being able to wait. Something to think about. Reason number 5 why I've decided to be a gentle parent and stop spanking. I learned through extensive research that spankings are actually not biblical. Let me say that again. Spankings are not biblical. I know I'm going to get a lot of flack from my fellow Christian community. But you know what? Do some research. Yes, the Bible is infallible. But translations are not. Go back to the original translations. Okay, so here's some reasons on why I think that the spanking is not biblical. And if you go to the blog, I've actually posted a ton of links that you can read more about this, including some free ebooks. So let me start off first by saying that whole spare the rod, spoil the child quote that everybody loves to quote. It's not even in the Bible. In fact, it's from a fairly lewd poem in the 17th century called Hudibras, I think that's how you pronounce it, by Samuel Butler. So let's stop using that phrase because it's not even a biblical phrase, and it's actually really gross when you start using it in reference to children. Just putting that out there. Do your research on it. So, this topic is quite in deep, that didn't even work. This topic is quite in depth, so I'm only going to cover just like the surface level here in this video. Again, go to the blog, look at those links. You'll find way more information than I can cover in this short little clip. So start with Proverbs. First of all, Proverbs is filled with poetry and metaphors. So if you kind of take that in context, automatically, maybe that's not what they're talking about. But let's say it's straight fact, okay? Let's say that yes, parents did cane their children. A few things that go with that. First of all, in the original Hebrew, okay, not a translation, but in the original Hebrew, the word that they used, that we now translate as child, actually meant a boy between like 12 and 20. I don't know how to pronounce the word, so I'm not going to, but it's N-A''AR. And basically that word is used when they're talking about a child who is no longer going to be a child. It's somebody that can be ripped away from their mother. Okay, that's why it's used in reference to Moses, because he was ripped away from his mother. But that's one of the only 2 times in the Bible it's used for someone that's not of that boy 12 to 20 age group. Okay. Second of all, this kind of discipline was used to prevent actual death. Because back then, you could actually be stoned for defying your fathers. So it's either hit him with a cane now that won't break his back, or he dies by stoning later. I would say in that kind of situation, you might want to go ahead and spank. But we're no longer in that situation anymore. So that's null and void. Second, Jewish leaders actually speak out against corporal punishment. The Jewish people who follow the rules of the Bible, right? The laws of the Old Testament, they don't even believe in spanking. So again, it was there to prevent a fate, right? That would be better than death. Secondly, we have the New Testament. And in the New Testament, Jesus came to save us from our sin, and the Old Testament law was no more. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to eat pork. We would have to circumcise. There's so many things we would still have to do, including sacrificing animals. But again, Jesus came and saved us from all of those things. Next, Jesus said, "He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." John 8:7. So if Jesus has told people, when the law has said they can do this, by the way, to cast the first stone only if you've done no wrong, I'm guessing we should probably do the same as parents. Jesus is that gentle parent, right? Like, if Jesus can do it, so can we. He specifically has said, only those who have not sinned may cast the first stone. So if you've never lied, you've never cheated, you've never yelled, screamed, hit, then I guess you can spank. But my guess is you've done all of those things. Finally, Jesus' story was filled with grace. So if we are to be more like Jesus, then we should be showing the grace to our children that Jesus shows us. If God doesn't punish us for all of our transgressions and offenses, and He died on the cross to save us from all that and gives us grace, and we just suffer natural consequences, then I'm fairly certain our children should also just suffer maybe logical consequences, but mostly just natural consequences. Something to think about. I want to end this reason with a wonderful quote I found. It says, "We do not yell, spank, or threaten, because the end result of those things is fear. And a wise man, aka Jesus, once said that perfect love drives out fear." Okay, now we're at reason number 6. Spanking, hitting, and shame tell children they are not in control. Now I know, you're sitting there thinking, well, they're not married, they are children. How could you let the children be in control? Well, first of all, sometimes you should let children be in control. Otherwise, how are they going to be adults in control? But that's not really what I'm talking about. As an adult, you need to be ultimately in control of the situation to keep everyone safe. The problem is you're dealing with a human being that has their own pains, their own desires, their own emotions, and their own needs. When we punish them for expressing all of those to us, then we're actually teaching them not to trust themselves. Why is this important? Spankings tell your child they are not in control of their body. It's training them that those bigger control those who are smaller, that those who are stronger control those who are weaker. Shame-based discipline actually trains a child not to trust their instincts, whether it's about food, their own skills, or around other people. They will continually question themselves. And probably the most important one for me in this is that spankings can lead to abusive relationships. It's really personal to me. But children learn two things with spanking, even if they don't realize it. One, hitting equals power. They see that whoever hits has the control. And that the fastest way to get what you want is to hit. Two, they learn that you are spanked because the person that loves you wants what's best for you. Now think about that. You've probably, if you have spanked or were spanked as a child, you've probably heard that phrase, I spank you because I love you. Great. So when they're an adult or even a teenager and they get into a relationship with an abusive person, and that person then hits them and says, I'm hitting you so you learn not to do this because I love you and want what's best for you, then that's okay, right? Think about that for a second. Problem is, that does become a child's mentality as an adult. It's what happened to me, okay? And so many other abusive people. You know, you sit there and you look at which I guess you call a victim, and you're like, why did you stay? Why would you stay with somebody like that? Well, this is kind of what goes through their head. They don't want to hurt me, but I'm doing something wrong, and I need to learn to not do that. And so they punish me for that, so because they love me. They're trying to help me be a better person. I deserve it because I've done something wrong. I know, it sounds really stupid right now, but that's essentially what you're telling a child when you spank them, to teach them a lesson. So it brings me to my final point, number 7. If it is not acceptable for one adult to hit another adult, why is it acceptable for an adult to hit a child? This quote kind of clinched my decision to become a gentle parent for me. When a child hits a child, we call it aggression. When a child hits an adult, we call it hostility. When an adult hits an adult, we call it assault. When an adult hits a child, we call it discipline. It's a quote by, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but Haim Janot. Like I said, these last 2 points are quite personal. In my first marriage, I did experience this. I always thought of spanking as a necessary thing you must do. But then when I realized that we can't even hit a dog without getting in trouble, but we can hit a child, what is right with that? If we think it's so wrong in this day and age to hit our spouse, why can we hit a defenseless child? At least a spouse is an adult who has ultimately some control over their lives. They can at least leave. A child can't. A child has no control over their situation. So why is that okay? It's not okay. If you can't hit another adult, if a child can't hit you, then you can't hit your child. It's just simple as that. If hitting is wrong, then hitting is wrong. You can't have that kind of dichotomy. It doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually exist. You either have to say that sometimes you have to either say hitting is right to teach a lesson, or hitting is wrong. We should be teaching our kids that the only time to hit somebody is in self-defense, to get out of a bad situation when somebody is hitting us. Then it's okay to hit back because you're trying to get away. It's to get away. It's your self-defense. That I think is okay. But you're not actively trying to punish somebody at that point. You're just trying to get away. So why is it okay if we hit our child? Some people will say, well, you don't leave marks on a child. My ex didn't leave marks on me. I don't bruise easy. I couldn't even take photos of things because what he did to me, you couldn't see. So is that okay then? Is my abusive ex-husband in the clear because he didn't leave marks on me, just like you don't leave marks on your child? If that sounds stupid to you, it is. It is stupid. It doesn't work. They're both wrong. So, in conclusion, I just want you to think about these things, because I know I had not. It took me kind of second guessing my trained response, because that's what it is. Me going to hit my child to keep him from doing something that would cause him danger. So me causing him pain to keep him from pain, basically, was a trained response. So I want you to think about why you have decided to do what you have decided to do, whatever that is, whether it's gentle parent or mainstream parenting. So there you have 7 reasons we decided to become more gentle and respectful parents. I hope this episode not only answered some questions you might have had, but I hope it also has helped you kind of reflect on your parenting styles. It made you just either more firmly believe what you do believe, or made you question something that may need changed in your parenting. Please comment below with why you parent the way you do, or what's holding you back from choosing the gentle parenting path. Okay. If you want to be inspired, if you want to be a more mindful parent, if you want to know what it takes to take that next step into creating your extraordinary life, then make sure to hit that subscribe button below. And then don't forget to hit the like button to show me you want more videos like this. You'll get weekly tips and inspiration on how to create your ideal life. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon for the next episode of This Parenting Life.